Hey, hello, good morning. My name is Jeff Glade. You are in the room for inspiring student and teacher voice through personal branding. We are going to get started in just a minute here. Hopefully you enjoyed those early 90s tunes from TLC. And we will be, I do want to make sure that I tell you right now that at the end of this session, we will be giving a prize out. So, and it is actually something that Nadine referenced in her presentation, which is a wiser.me subscription for a year. So some really cool things that can be done with Wiser, as she kind of referenced, and that will happen at the end of this session. So if for no other reason, stick around for that. I'm going to switch over here and we'll get our presentation going. While I'm going, you may see me look off to the side. That's my iPad, which is where I have the chat. So if you have any questions, you can throw it in the chat. I believe that Marissa Dahl is also in the room, and she will hopefully be keeping an eye on that, and she can interject. She's waving, she's there, and she can interject and let me know if there are any questions as we go through. Okay, so with that said, we are going to be talking about branding. We're inspiring student voice and teacher voice through personal branding. So I worked really hard on this presentation. I was working to make sure that everybody could leave here feeling like they got something. Now that something might be a new way to look at things, or hopefully it's a new actionable item that you can do when you leave here or as you're planning for the school year moving forward. Introduction to myself. My name is Jeff Glade. I'm an instructional technology consultant for Heartland. My email is there, as well as my Twitter and my Instagram. We're talking about branding. If you check out my Twitter, you will see some of the branding work that I've done. My Instagram needs some work, so that's definitely something that I'm working on doing more of, but there are some resources on there that I like to share out. Feel free to follow me on either one of those. After today, if you have any questions, also feel free to reach out, jglade@heartlandaea.org. If you have a question about the resources that we address through this presentation or any of these ideas, I'd love to follow up with you. Okay, so brief little agenda for what we're going to do for the next 15 minutes or so. We're going to define branding. We'll look at where it fits in our world. We'll talk about logo creation and branding ideas for all ages. So I've thought about how we can do this from our youngest learners all the way up through our high school kids and for teachers as well. And then next steps, what we can do as we move forward from here. Okay, so let's talk about branding. So you've probably heard the word branding before, and the official definition of the word branding is the marketing practice of creating a name, symbol, or design that identifies and differentiates a product from other products. As we're going through today, the product that we're going to be talking about is yourself. You are the product. Your students are the product. And how can we help to prepare them for the world that they are living in already, lots of them, and also the world that they will be entering as they get older? So who has a personal brand? When you think about a personal brand, you maybe haven't thought of it before, but if you have, you probably are thinking about influencers. There are social media influencers that have brands and they're building out these developed brands. There are companies that have brands. So the simple answer for who has a personal brand, it's you. You have a personal brand. You are a brand. Your name is a brand. You maybe haven't thought of it like that, but as I go through here today, I think you're going to see that we can consider our personal brand and it can really influence our work, how we interact with the community at large, with parents and with students as well. As we're talking about your personal brand, even before students have you as a student, they have an idea of you based on your name. They've Googled you, they've seen you in the halls, they've heard from other students. You have been developing a reputation, a brand throughout your teaching. Parents have an idea of you. Future employers, the community at large, as I referenced, have an idea of you based on your name. So as we're considering that, we want to make sure that what we're putting out there is allowing these people to know us, to like us and trust us. Those are the three words that I like to encourage you to consider when we're thinking about a brand. This again goes for our students as well. What are we putting out there that allows people to know us, like us, and trust us? We all have a story to tell, and if you don't tell yours, someone else will. Now that is so important in our life. Our students have stories to tell. If they don't tell their own stories, someone else will tell it for them. When we consider what we're doing in this room, we're talking about education. We are all educators. We have a story to tell. We have a duty, I believe, to tell our story as educators. We know that educators are, put in the firing line every year. 1 year ago, everybody was praising educators for all the work they were doing. How quickly that turned into some people doing the exact opposite of the work educators were doing. There is a perception of what we do with very few people actually knowing or understanding what we do. And a little bit of that onus falls on us. Are we communicating outward what we're doing? Are we showing people that they can know us? We're allowing them to like us, and we are giving information that helps them to trust us. There will be some naysayers no matter what we do, but we need to make our best effort to communicate that forward. We all have a story to tell, and people are telling our stories for us. We've got to get ahead of that. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about that concept as we move forward. So as you start to consider how you might brand yourself, and this is maybe a completely new idea to you, but as you start to consider how you might brand yourself, I want you to think for a minute what 3 words or phrases you would want to define you. When someone hears your name, that someone could be a student who might have you next year. It could be a parent, someone in the community. It could be a family member. It could, so you can think about this through like the personal lens or the professional lens. What 3 words or phrases would you want to define you? If you're comfortable sharing 1, 2, or 3 of those in the chat, I would love to see some of what you want to push forward as we're working through the rest of the session. Kind of keep those ideas in the back of your mind. What would you want to define you? I can tell you, I won't type mine, but I will tell you that some of the phrases, it's hard for me to just get it down to 1 word, but some of the phrases that I would want to define me would be a passionate educator, right? So I'm thinking on the personal lens right now. I would want people to know that I'm passionate about what I do. I would want them to know that I am a thoughtful, caring person. So as I interact with people, I want to be thoughtful. I want them to know that they can trust me, and I will do all that I can to take care of them. And then the final piece is a proud dad. So I am a dad, and that's a big part of who I am. And I want to show that. And when we go back to telling that story, a little personal bit about me is I am a gay man. I'm a gay man with a husband. We have a beautiful child and a beautiful family. And that is part of my duty to get out in front of that and communicate that story. As I said, very proud of my family. And I want everyone to see that and to understand that. There are people who don't understand our life. The best way to get people to understand your life is to tell your story. So if we can start to consider brands as stories, we can get our story out there, get people to know, like, and trust us. And we can start to shift people's thinking. Those 3 words, and I see people putting things in the chat. Thank you so much. I see dedicated, there's wife, mom, loyal, patient, kind, happy, essentially, organized, inclusive, driven, technology, creativity, gamifying things. Lots of things there. And those things that you just put, whether you typed them or just were thinking them in your head, if people were to Google you, and I'm going to change that, not if they Google you, but when they Google you, would they find things that communicate those ideas? And I think for a lot of us, they wouldn't. And not necessarily that they find terrible things, but they wouldn't necessarily find what we want to communicate. How are we putting that out into the world? How are we branding ourselves or telling our stories? This goes for kids, by the way. Please don't forget that piece. And I'm going to get to kids more explicitly soon, but this applies to students too. Okay, so this is Samantha Gowdy. It's actually pronounced Gowdy, I believe. Sorry about that. Samantha Gowdy. You might be familiar with her. 8 years ago, you can see on August 13th, no, that's wrong, I'm sorry, August 31st in 2013, she tweeted, just went to jail, #YOLO. Her Twitter handle was Vodka Sam. This made national news. It made actually international news. And interestingly for us in this group, Samantha Gowdy was attending the University of Iowa at the time. She tweeted this, and then there was a series of unfortunate tweets that followed as well. And that became sort of a viral thing, sort of at the beginning of when things were becoming viral in this way. Do you think that that is what she wanted people to find when they Googled her? Obviously, the answer would be no. This poor woman has had to deal with this, and there are ramifications that are long lasting. So if we talk about Samantha Gowdy, after this experience, the Des Moines Register reported on her, the New York Daily News, Huffington Post, 2020, and on and on. I could keep going, but many outlets reported on this story. Excuse me. That was 8 years ago, or coming up on 8 years ago. This event remains in the top 5 of her Google results. If you Google the name Samantha Gowdy, you will see a story on this in her top 5 results. And even almost more sad for me is on Twitter, if you Google Vodka Sam, 8 years later, this happened 8 years ago, there are still weekly tweets kind of joking about Vodka Sam and kind of playing off of that reputation that she built for herself. That is her brand right now, 8 years later. What you don't see, unless you dig really hard, which is what I did, Samantha Gowdy removed herself from social media. She removed herself from sort of an online presence with a few exceptions. When you dig really hard, you can eventually find her Instagram account, and the bio that she communicates is there. And when you look at that, Samantha Gowdy graduated from the University of Iowa. She got her BA. She moved on, she got her master's in social work. She's currently working on another master's. She has advocated for eating disorder. She's been a mental health awareness advocate, as well as a domestic violence advocate. This, by all accounts, seems like an incredible woman who did something kind of dumb 8 years ago, but she's finding it nearly impossible to get out from under that. The brand that we put out there can stick with us for a very long time. Samantha Gowdy is going to have to deal with that when people Google her name, because they will, and they have, and they will continue to do so. When they Google her name as she's applying for jobs, this is something she's going to have to consider dealing with. Are we communicating this with her students? Now, on the flip side of that, there's a girl named Abigail Mack. Now, this is a TikTok video that became viral about a month ago. And I'm just gonna, in a moment, I'm gonna play it. It's about 1 minute long, and I will crank the sound up so you can hear it. And we'll listen to this. This is Abigail talking about the essay that she wrote to get into Harvard as well as other schools, and she got accepted into Harvard. And she reads the introduction to this essay.
This is the introduction to the Common App essay that got me into Harvard. I hate the letter S. Of the 164,777 words with S, I only grapple with one. To condemn an entire letter because of its use 0.0006% of the time sounds statistically absurd, but that one case changed 100% of my life. I used to have 2 parents, but now I have 1, and the S in parents isn't going anywhere. S follows me. I can't get through a day without being reminded that while my friends went out to dinner with their parents, I ate with my parent. As I write this essay, there is a blue line under the word parent telling me to check my grammar. Even Grammarly assumes that I should have parents, but Cancer doesn't listen to edit suggestions. I won't claim that my situation is as unique as one in 164,777, but it is still an exception to the rule, an outlier. The world isn't meant for this special case.
Okay, so that was from TikTok. If you're unfamiliar, TikTok is a social media app. You've likely heard the name, but maybe you've never seen a TikTok. Lots of times they're kind of goofy dances and silly things going on. But there's also some really cool things going on TikTok as well. This is an example. There are tutorials. There are people telling their stories and getting them out there. There's a lot of really amazing things happening on TikTok. There's a hashtag you can follow, hashtag learn from TikTok. And all the things that are put there are little lessons on how to do things. Things from planting a garden to, maybe tying a tie. Everything under the sun. But that's Abigail Mack.
This is the introduction to the.
There we go. That video that you just watched, as of 1 day ago, had 19.3 million views. So I think it's safe to assume that eventually that will surpass 20 million views of the introduction to her essay. She now has more than 130,000 followers on TikTok. And Abigail, as a student who would make it into Harvard, maybe we're not surprised that she's really savvy. She's thinking about these things, and she has built her brand around this. She now gives college application advice. She got accepted to a whole slew of, high-end colleges. She's giving application advice. There are tips and tricks videos that she gives. People ask her questions and she'll respond to them about college applications, all the way through how to sort of manage stress and deal with time management for a kid who's in high school and really active and sort of dealing with a lot of things. She's also given some responses to people who have other kids who have also lost their parents. She has become a brand. She's always been a brand. We're all brands, but she has developed that brand. Additionally, she has performance clips. So she's an actress and a singer. She likes theater. You can find her singing. You can also find some sort of those silly dancing videos that we might think of with TikTok. Those are on there as well. They're age appropriate. She is, roughly 18 years old. And that is what kids her age are doing. They make sense for Abigail. And if we go back to thinking about know, like, and trust, Abigail has done that for herself. We know who she is. We found out, a terrible side of what has happened in her life with her, you do find out that her mother was passed away when she was about 13. Um, so you find that, you know her, you know about her, you like her, you're seeing this vulnerable side of her, you are seeing the funny sort of like dancing clips, you like her, she's charming, you see those performance clips, and then you trust her. We know she got into Harvard, we see her responding to people, we see these really helpful application tips and answers and replies to questions from her viewers and time management tips, all of these things. Abigail has branded herself beautifully. If you Google Abigail, you are going to find all the positives, right? So Abigail made it to Harvard. And a stat that blows my mind with Harvard is that more than 50% of Harvard applicants with a perfect score on the ACT get rejected. So a perfect score on the ACT is, top tier. That's incredible. Not many people get that. And more than half of those people don't get accepted anymore. Grades and test scores are not good enough anymore. There's so many things that we can bring into our digital resume, which is our brand, our digital resume. What can we do to communicate what brings us, rises us to the top? What can our students do to build their brand so that when they're applying for colleges and their name is Googled, the best things come up, the best sides of themselves, the best stories they have to tell are what we're seeing. Abigail's done a great job. Samantha, if she could go back in time, would change some of what she did, I'm sure. And when we consider Samantha to Abigail, there's sort of a spectrum of how they've communicated who they are, right? So if we Google and we find out things about them, we are seeing there are negative things online. And in the situation that I just shared, the biggest story about Samantha would be negative. And then there are positive things we can find. Abigail's is obviously very positive. And then there's neutral. There's that middle gray area. And again, when people Google you, not if they do, but when they Google you, most of us would, what they find, most of our results would fall into that neutral category. You would find that you teach at this place, you went to college maybe here, maybe a social media account that you have. What we need to do and what we need to help our students do is kind of replace those neutral stories with the positive, right? So there might be negative stories that we also want to deal with and try to handle the best we can, but we want the positive results, the best things we can. We want those to rise to the top of our search results. Now we're going to sort of shift to thinking about our students. And again, I hope that you've been thinking about your students all the way through. And this does apply to those younger kids too, where they are not building their social media profiles yet, but we can start to build some skills and some innate knowledge within them so that when that time comes, they're ready to go and they know how to communicate their story. When we think about our students, they are not students like we were growing up. Their experience is drastically different than what we experienced growing up. And I'm sure lots of us are glad that when we went to the University of Iowa, that we weren't able to tweet, or we didn't have Instagram, and things weren't, put out to the public. That wasn't even an option. And a lot of us are lucky because of that. Our students are not. So we need to consider who our students are. The students that we're teaching are Generation Z and Generation Alpha learners. So Generation Alpha is students who were born after 2010. When we consider who these kids are, we need to realize they are hands-on learners. Now, this maybe isn't always the traditional hands-on that we think about. They do like tactile things. Lots of kids, of course, love to touch and manipulate and work with things, and that's something we should continue doing. But also hands-on now applies to hands-on technology. They are swiping. They can figure out technology faster than we can. They will click around. I do technology training with teachers, and I always encourage them, just click and try it. Kids aren't afraid to click and try it. They're hands-on and they will learn doing so. These kids are visual and they're viral. So they operate in a visual world. When we look at where they're spending their time online, it's visual based. They communicate that way. They take in information that way, but then they also will make things viral. As we saw with Samantha, that can happen quickly in a really negative way, but it can also happen really positively with Abigail. So we need to get them to understand that piece. They're connected. Of course, they're connected. They're also social entrepreneurs. So they work together, they develop ideas, and they're making money. So there are kids on TikTok who are making more than any of us in this room, and they're just showing who they are, and they're putting out fun videos and communicating that. They are entrepreneurs. And then the last piece is they're information seekers. And that's something I think that these generations lots of times are not given credit for. So I think a lot of people will say that kids from this generation or millennials also, and I'm speaking as a geriatric millennial, which I just learned I technically would be considered a geriatric millennial, so that's cool. They are information seekers. I know if I am on the couch and something comes up in a show I want to know more about, or there's a word I don't know, or oh, what other movie was that actor in? Why do I know that person? I'll get on my phone and I'll find it in no time. Answer, I found the answer, and I move on. And that is what kids are doing too. They're seeking out information. They can find information in a number of ways. If they want to learn, I referenced before, how to tie a tie, they'll get on YouTube or TikTok and figure out how to tie a tie. They need to change a tire, same thing. They are seeking information, and it's maybe not the way that we're used to, or that we might want them to seek information, or that we are used to seeking information. Nonetheless, they are. We need to teach them how to harness that, how to direct that, and sometimes maybe vet the information that they're seeking, because as we know, there's a lot of sources that we should be considering the credibility of them, but they're seeking information. Then our kids are also storytellers, and that's been true forever. So, right, kids will make up stories and they'll tell a story, they'll go on and on. They love to tell stories, but kids now, their life has become telling stories. So if we look at some of the 5 of the most commonly used apps or tools from kids, if you're unfamiliar, you're probably familiar with these logos, but we have Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat, and TikTok. They're all story-based telling apps. So sometimes they're taking in the story, of course, but YouTube, as we know, they can create and upload their own videos. They can tell stories through that. Same with all of these. These kids are telling stories. They're not always telling them, they're not always telling the story, though, that they should be telling, right? We need to help them understand which stories they should be telling. We need to help them build that brand. We also would benefit from ourselves sometimes considering how we are telling stories, but also helping parents to understand how to tell stories. So parents are including their kids more and more in their social media. If you find someone, you're going to likely see pictures of their child online. You're going to hear a story about their child online. Those parents should be considering that that is part of their child's footprint. Or I've also heard the term digital shadow. So the student is not actively creating that, but it's a shadow of your own footprint. So what does your brand look like, and how does that affect your kids? If you were to get on my Twitter, which you don't have to do, but if you were to get on my Twitter, you would start to see a lot of professional tweets from me, right? So I want people to trust me. I want them to see that I have good knowledge on what I do, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm communicating that forward. But you would also start to know me a little bit. You're going to see stories about Patrick and funny little quotes that he has or different things. And that also helps you to like me. So we're communicating these stories, and we need to understand which stories need to be told and help kids to sort of edit themselves. Sorry, I was just glancing at the chat there. Yeah, Marissa, I agree that there are kids in our buildings who are sort of TikTok famous. And there are some teachers in the Heartland region, I know, who are TikTok famous with thousands and thousands of followers. So this is happening sometimes that, and we're unaware. So, but we always need to keep that, at the fore of our mind. And speaking of that, you may be sitting here thinking, I'm not doing that. It's not for me. I'm not building a brand. I'm not going to tell my story. And you may not be ready to, but you have students who are, and you have students who are already doing so. We have to address that. We have to support them and help build those skills and that knowledge for them. Quickly, we'll reference here the ISTE standards. So ISTE standards are standards for all students. They're developed internationally around technology with the input of businesses and major businesses. And these are skills that students should be having. And they're similar to the universal constructs that are part of the Iowa core, but with some more teeth, if you ask me. And here we could look at these, but the first one that comes out to me is digital citizen. And part of that, those criteria, if you were to open that, is that students need to know how to curate their brand. They need to get that out there. I'm not sure the word brand is in there, but they need to curate their digital footprint, and we need to start helping them do so. And then there's also a social emotional learning side of this. I pulled out the CASEL competency. So CASEL stands for Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It's sort of the go-to organization in the United States, at least, that would discuss the social emotional competencies. And I just pulled out a couple. Self-awareness. So I bolded some of the words in the description there for self-awareness. They need to understand their thoughts, their values. How are they going to communicate that and accurately figure out what their strengths are? And that's what we want to rise to the top. That's what we want them to communicate forward. And then relationship skills. So how are we communicating? How are we understanding the story that we tell? And the best way we can do that is that someone else understands our story, but then also receiving other stories and hoping to encourage them along the way. And then the last piece that's kind of on a similar thought is Leader in Me. So some of you might be familiar, it's become really popular in the area. Leader in Me is based on the 7 highly effective habits of highly effective people. And it has been, the language has been changed slightly to work for students. And it's sort of just a structure that allows students to kind of take ownership of who they are and figure out how to better themselves and become more full, well-rounded people, highly effective people. And when I look at these habits, number 8 jumps out immediately. Find your voice and inspire others to find theirs. As we're helping kids to find their brand and their logos, develop logos, which we'll talk about in just a moment, we're helping them to find their voice, take ownership and pride in who they are. Then we can backtrack maybe to habit 1 and 2. So be proactive, get ahead of the story. That's especially important as we start thinking about older kids, but get ahead of the story, get the best news about yourself out there, those positive results so that people know, like, and trust you. And begin with that end in mind. So what is your end? Is your end as a student? Is their end to get to college? Is their end to have a career in a certain industry? And start back mapping. What are we going to do to build ourselves up there? And part of that is their brand. Personal brands are job security now. So if you have a brand out there, as you, not you necessarily, but as your students apply for work, they will be Googled, and that brand is sort of a fail-safe. It's that backup. It's that cushion they have to support them as they're looking for jobs and looking to further their career. With all of that said, how might we actually get students to start articulating their story, even at the youngest level? So I believe I have some teachers who teach younger grades in here. There are ideas that we can do. This might feel like a higher end thing, but it's definitely something we should consider with our younger kids as well. So the first thing is a logo creation activity. There are other options. Canva has one. There are some, if you Google logo creator, there's a lot, and a lot of them end up actually charging you in a kind of a sneaky way. Adobe Spark Logo Creator is completely free, and it is the one that I prefer specifically for this activity. Here's sort of the steps that you'll do it. In the second here, I will model this, and I encourage you, I really would love if you would go along with the process with me. The link is active, so again, if you don't have this presentation on your computer, it's from the digital program, and the link there is active. So I'm going to click on this Adobe Spark Logo Creator. You can also, if you just Google Adobe Spark Logo Creator, it will come up. For this part, you do not need to sign up. Adobe Spark is completely free, though. It's COPPA and FERPA compliant, which is a privacy situation that a lot of teachers forget to check on. It's completely free for students and educators. And you could sign up today if you haven't already. You'll have a free account, and then start looking forward to, in the fall, how you might get your kids signed up. So I'll click Get Started Now. And then the first question down here, I saved what I did last time. So tell us about your logo. So this is, if kids were doing this for like an entrepreneurship class, they could do this as well for like a pretend food truck that they're creating or whatever business they might be doing. But for this case, we're having students create their own personal logo. So your business, you could say student or education. And then for this example, this activity, I would say the company is, or the business is your name, because again, they are the brand. And you could put in a slogan. I'm not going to do that, but you could put in a slogan, excuse me, and then we click next. So the next question here is just which general style stands out to you? Again, what's going to communicate who you are and how you act, and what's the best version of yourself? So which one of those speaks to you? And you just click on one, and you can change that later if you decide you wanted to do something different. So I'm going to click on modern, and then click next, and then choose an icon. So the way this creator works is with one icon. So down the road, there are ways, of course, to put multiple icons in, but logos, you don't want to be too complicated. So put an icon. So if I'm thinking about myself and my brand in my role as an instructional technology consultant, I would put in devices. And I'm seeing some conversation about Canva. Canva is super great, and I absolutely encourage it. For the logo creator activity, this one has more options, and Canva is sort of sunsetting their logo creator generator. So if you're planning for the fall, maybe just have this in mind, because we don't know when Canvas will go away. So if I type in, I'm going to type in devices, because as I was saying, I want to find something that represents my role. And as I look through here, there's lots of different devices. And so what I'm trying to communicate is here, I could help you with multiple things, lots of different technology. I like this one right here. And I will click next. Again, I hope Some of you are giving this a shot. It's super easy. And then you can scroll through. So they have created logos within the style modern that I chose with my name, at times my initials, and then at times the icon I chose. So I can scroll through and find something I like. Keep scrolling and it will keep loading. I don't know, about maybe like 3 different pages as you scroll down. And then at the very bottom, there will be something that says something similar to, don't like any of these, switch your style. There it is, different style. And you can go back, that's where I said we could choose bold or elegant or decorative after the fact. And so then I will find one that I like real quickly. I kind of like this one. So I'm going to click on that. And then from this, this could be it, right? So I could click download, kids have their logo, and we'll talk about some things that they could do with that logo. They could do that right now. That was it, activity over. Eventually though, giving a little more customization would be smart, especially if you're working with slightly older kids. So I'm gonna click customize more. It's gonna bring me into my Adobe Spark account. If you don't have one yet at this prompt, I believe it will ask you to sign up, and that's where you could sign up with Google. Use that sign up with Google button and it will bring in those credentials. Now it's bringing me into the Spark post creator. So as this is loading, Spark is a suite of 3 tools. It has presentation, which they call page, which is a one web page website. And it can be used as a website. It can also be used as a presentation tool. There are videos that are super easy to make, great for younger kids. I've used them with kindergartners. It's something they can do. Our 5-year-old at home has made some about whale sharks. I think he even did that maybe when he was 4 years old. It is definitely user-friendly. And then Spark Post is what we're looking at right now. These are things that are sized, ready to share with social media. So this is a square, perfect to put on documents or other things, but also perfect to share on Instagram. Instagram wants square images. There you go. But then I can also adjust this. So if I'm looking at this and I like elements of this, but I want to make it a little bit different, that JG I like, but I'm gonna change a little bit maybe. I just selected both of those and I'm gonna grab the corner and shrink it down, and I have an idea in mind. I think I want that on the screen. So I'm gonna also grab my icon, move it to the center. Oh, my computer's lagging just a little bit. Bring my name up right beneath, and then my plan is to put that little square right in the middle of the screen. Oh, let's grab just the text. And click that group button so they travel together now. And I'll put it right there in the middle. From here, I could click on there and I could change the font. So, maybe I like everything except that font. And just as an example, I'll find one just so you can see what it looks like. Maybe I prefer the way that looks. And then we have colors. So if I click on colors in the top right, there are all these different color options. I can change individual colors, but I can also use these template or palettes that they put together and find one that feels like it stands out to me. So this is considered modern colors. And since I chose the modern aesthetic, maybe that makes sense for me to choose. As I look, I kind of like this one, click it, and it changes every element to match one of those colors. Maybe I like those colors, but I still want to mix it up. The shuffle icon with the arrows that cross will shuffle those colors. That one doesn't work. And we can find something that we like. Maybe do it one more time. I really like that. I can now download and I have an image that I could use, I could share out. I have created my logo. We will come back to Spark a little bit later too. So that is the Spark logo creator. This could be the first step as we're starting to consider brands for students. And it also helps them as a sort of self-reflection to understand themselves, start to communicate that outward. And this is that other piece of brainstorming some of those things. We could use Adobe Spark logo creator and it's done. As you saw, it took about 1 or 2 minutes to create something. But we could also have that process become longer, where they could brainstorm representative values that they want to communicate, characteristics and interests, pick 2 or 3, make a mind map, start finding commonalities, and then create. So rapid creation is good for this activity where they're going to create 5 to 10 in a very short amount of time. You give them limits and they have to create as much as they can. That way, some kids will get stuck, and I know I would, even to this day, get stuck on one idea, and sometimes it just shuts me down. If we encourage rapid creation, then we can come back and iterate on those ideas, find one we like, and really define or develop and refine, rather, that idea. So here's some logo creation ideas. I referenced Adobe Spark and Canva. Textgraph is a super basic, super easy one. We can also take it to Google Drawing and Slides. That goes for PowerPoint as well. And then get the idea from a different source, but then make it more our own in a tool that allows for full customization. Spark and Canva can do that, so can Drawing or Slides. I also encourage sometimes to get inspiration from other ideas. If you go to those first 3, Logo AI, Hatchful, and Design Evo, you can create a logo that looks beautiful, but to get it, you would need to pay for it. But nonetheless, you can see what they create and what you really like and what speaks to you, and then start to recreate that in one of these free tools. Behance is an Adobe, I don't know if we would call it a product, but it's like a form. If you go to Behance, you can Google and you'll see creation from creators, content creators, so graphic designers, and lots of different, sort of like a mood board. You can build a mood board and get inspiration. And then this is my logo for myself. And I was going to speak to that for a minute, and I'll speak to it in a little bit again. But this is what I chose when I created this. It looks very similar. Some of you might recognize it. The colors are very similar to the Microsoft colors, as is the background design of their logo. And those same colors are the same colors as in the Google logos. And they're not the exact same, of course, but in general, yellow, blue, red, and green. And then in the middle is the purple piece that bleeds out and it's turned sideways. And that's sort of representing me, right? So it's, I, as a consultant, could step in and help you connect these pieces. I am that middle piece that's going to bring all these disparate ideas together into a more cohesive idea. And then we have these archetypes. So this is another running start when we're helping kids to develop brands. If you are a literacy teacher or a literature teacher, you're probably familiar. Carl Jung developed 12 archetypes, part of our collective conscious, unconscious, which is just that we are innately familiar with them. When we hear these, we have a reference point through generations of culture that has been ingrained in us. These are also commonly paired with brands, and that site, if you click on that, is an interesting site where you can read about them. Both of those are interesting. But comparing it to a brand is a fun idea in that kids can say, hey, I like Nike. Nike is the brand is communicated as a hero. That's the way they do their branding. I want to communicate that in a similar way. What can I start doing to make myself more like Nike's communication, their brand? And sometimes for kids, it's not necessarily who they are, but rather who they aspire to be. They look up to these people or these brands and the stories that they're telling. What can we do to get ourselves there? This is the wheel of the 12 brands. And I'm not going to draw or point out all of them, but the outside is the actual archetype. So we have sage, and then in the coming in is what they're seeking. So they're seeking understanding. And then within even further in that inner circle is sort of the major goal. They want to explore spirituality. That's a traditional idea, of course. But the hero, their goal is mastery, or that's what they're seeking is mastery, and their bigger goal is to leave a legacy. Again, there's a lot that we can do with these archetypes, a lot of really fun activities that can kind of be unrelated to branding yourself, but this is a really fun reference point. And then here's a little quiz. Now, I encourage you to take this quiz. It will take you probably less than 1 minute. This is a really basic quiz. If you Google archetypes survey or quiz, you're going to find several examples, and some of them are long, and that's actually a good thing, right? So it can help students and teachers sort of dig into who they might be a little more clearly. This one's so surface level, but it's a good reference for today at the very least. So the first question is, what animal do you most identify with? And identify is sort of arbitrary. What does that mean to us? You'll just decide, and then find one that you feel like represents you. I'm going to choose, what am I going to choose? I will choose owl, and then go to the next question, which is, what do you do in your free time? Some of these don't work for you, of course, so just pick the one that best represents what you might do. If I were to choose that one, I would probably be B or C. For this purpose, I will do C. Read a book. And then your favorite color among these choices, I would choose green. What's your favorite form of social media? So it's definitely one of the top two, Instagram or Twitter. I think I actively use Twitter more often. And then what quality do you admire most in others? I really appreciate in others among these options, wisdom. And I will submit. So it will say I'm a sage. Now I can find out more about sage and what that means as as an archetype and how that connects with me. And it might not connect. That was like 5 questions. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, but it's a good place to start. And I see some people are sharing their logos. That is awesome. So click on those logos in the chat if you haven't already. My brand goals, I look at 3 overarching goals for my own personal brand. So on the left, we have the Sage, which that came up. And in my role as a consultant, I want to show that I'm understanding. I want to show that I am knowledgeable. I'm guiding. And those are some of the things I want to communicate. On the right, all the way on the right, I want to show that I'm a creator. I'm innovative, heart of innovation. We're innovative as a team. We're inspirational. We're daring. We're going to help you figure out the things that you felt like couldn't be done. The brand message here, or one of the quotes is, if it can be imagined, it can be created. So I want people to understand that we can make it happen, which goes along with the magician. It can happen. So I don't love that it says the magician loves power. Taking that out, the rest does really speak to what I want to communicate about myself. It can happen. I believe it can happen. We can find a way. We can use magical thinking to make it happen. And that's sort of what I want to represent for people. So like they felt like something couldn't happen in their role. Here comes the magician, and I can maybe help support that process. Looking one more time at my logo, what I've done here is communicate that with that piece in the middle, that purple piece. And when you look at colors for magician, there's more digging into that. The colors are purple lots of times. Purple represents wisdom and sort of magical or mystical thinking. And that's that middle piece with me. So purple, as you can see, my slideshow, if you've been paying attention, is branded to align with this logo and these colors. That's what I want to communicate. When you see something that I've created for personal reasons, I want you to say, oh, that's Jeff's. And I've started to build that brand. When we talk about branding in Adobe Spark, this is going to be a quick little thing, but I want to show you that I already had a tab open. That's not the one. Here in Adobe Spark, and I use Adobe Spark all the time. Again, free for students. Canva, again, free for students. If you already use Canva, you're comfortable, go there. If you don't know which to try both for a day and see what you like, and then kind of commit to that one. They both have very similar options. Canva actually allows for a few more personalization along in every step of the way, which can be a good thing, but also sometimes kids can get really focused on customizing little tiny bits that don't actually matter to the project as a whole. So that would be sort of the biggest difference that's arisen for me. Within Adobe Spark, again, this can happen in Canva. If I click on brands, you can see I'll have some brands here as it comes up. So here's my Jeff Glade brand. There's our Heart of Innovation brand for our team. And I can create things from that brand. I've already done this, but if I click on Edit Brand, from here, I can pick my main color, which is that purple, magical, mystical color, and then my other colors, secondary colors, my logo, and then I can also pick a font. So when I create images or videos or a website, I can bring in these settings and they will automatically look like they belong to this brand. So the way that could look is, if I scroll down, here you can see, I can just start from here. Here's really basic ones that they give you for whatever brand you choose. But if I click on that, this Facebook ad, maybe I'll do this thank you. So this is a thank you note. Real quickly, I will show you, hopefully. Being kind of slow. So as it's coming up, it will give me what you just saw, but then I can change every element of this. My logo is down there in the center. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And if I click on design, that's where I could change my brand. And if it's under the brandify, if I shuffle, that will shuffle the different elements of my brand. So in just a second, you can see it kept purple, but different shades of purple. And it will continue doing that. It will always make black part of your brand. And then I can even be a little more specific and click on the word thank you. It's that PT Sans Narrow Bold, which I chose as my font. And from there, the color, if I click on this box for text color, up here, here's the text color for Jeff Glade, the Jeff Glade brand. And I could make it green, let's say, and adjust from there. Quick to make something that fits your brand. And that's all I'm going to show on that. There's a lot of digging in we can do with Adobe Spark, but time is running short. Talked about colors, and here's just an idea to reference colors. So as we're talking about colors, they communicate things. There's a lot of images similar to this with color psychology and how we connect to them. You can find brands that already exist and what color they utilize, and maybe a couple of the adjectives that we innately connect with those colors. Not everybody connects in the same way. This is a very broad stroke, but it's an idea and it's a kind of a fun reference point for kids. There are color tools. So Adobe Color and Canva Colors both are similar tools in that we can create palettes. You can find the way colors look together. It will use color theory to make the color palette, because if you're anything like me, I know nothing about color theory. So this does the work for you with AI. And then Colorzilla is my extension that I use. So it's up here. It's an eyedropper tool, Colorzilla. There's other ones that work too. This is just the one I use personally. Any website that I work on, I can get the hex code. So if I click on that and pick color from page, and I want this yellow, which the darker yellow is my yellow, I brought that hex code, and now I could change the font color on this slide or a shape color. There's a lot of options. Okay, so in the last few minutes, as we're looking at next steps, there are ideas for younger students. So we can brand in Seesaw, Google Classroom, allow kids to post their wow work, their work that they want to highlight, and talk to them about, you want to tell your story, you want to communicate the best parts of yourself on Friday, let's say. Pick the thing that you feel like tells the best story about your week, the positive story that people want to see, and start sharing that. You can use connected blogs within Seesaw to connect with other classrooms who are doing similar things. That logo creation idea I talked about, do that with young kids. They would love it. I did it with our 5-year-old at home. His icon was a Komodo dragon, and he picked blue because he loved blue. Print that out, put it on their locker, put it on their nameplate. You know, kids would love that. And then start to put it on their digital work. Teach them how to drag that image onto their, whatever they're doing. And then we don't have to explicitly talk about branding with kids, but we're building those skills. This is my work. I want you to recognize it's my work right away, and it's my best work. Older kids, so they've got that brand. Help them get content out. They should have a website or a portfolio that when we Google them, we're finding their name. With, it could be sports highlights, it could be performance highlights, artwork, it could be narratives that they've written, anything to get out there. And then that social media, help them to understand that if it's tied to their name, it needs to be the good stuff. So Jeff Glade EDU, for instance, I would never put negative things on that. That's what the Fits does for, the fake Instagram. That's what those things are for, to put the ridiculousness that all kids are going to do. Don't make it easy to find you in that way. They can create logos for literary characters, connect those to the archetypes, make fake social media posts, videos. And I strongly think that every high school, especially, and even middle school, should have a social media workshop for older students. Teach them how to communicate this. Some of what we just went through. Athletes, often there's always a story about an athlete who had a scholarship that they lost because an old tweet or an old Instagram post came up and they were doing something stupid, which most kids do. Help them to understand that. Teach it explicitly. And then build a class brand or logo. So everything we just talked about with individual logos, that could be done with a class or a homeroom. With little kids, have them do that in a full class. If you teach kindergarten or first grade, maybe you're not ready for individual logos. Start with your class logo, change it each year. Build the community and culture in your classroom that they feel like they helped to create that. They have pride in their class. And like I said, change it each year, because if you have the same class name every year, it doesn't feel as special. Print out those logos, put it on anchor charts that you put on the wall, put it on communications that you send home to parents. There's a lot that you can do there, and some ideas. Trying to wrap up here quickly. So teach your school brand, similar to the class brand, but maybe do one for the whole school. Now, a lot of districts will have some district brands that are already used, and those can't be changed, but brand your school for the year. We're going to focus on this. Do that for individual teachers with back to school PD. And I said, think about the one word, I don't know what it's called, but like the one word activity that people do around New Year's, where they have one word that's going to guide or represent their year. We could do that for our school year. Create those for each individual teacher or teams or PLCs, and then commit to the behaviors that will encourage that brand, encourage students, parents, tell our story to the community, communicate what we want to communicate, get ahead of it, tell our story, don't let them tell our story. And then plus Adobe Spark or Canva or another tool could be embedded into that PD so they could learn that tool as they're going through. The last thing, I'm going to say this one more time, and then I do have a few more slides after this, which is we all have a story to tell. You don't tell yours, someone else will. Our students, our kids have a story to tell. They don't tell it, someone else will. We need to empower them to tell their stories and to articulate their stories in a way that's authentic for them. That means social media. That means visual communication. How are we helping them to tell their story? Last piece, it's just me one more time. This is my information, my contact information. If any of this resonated with you, if any of this is something you want to follow up with me on, please feel free to reach out. Any of those bottom 3 options will work. I hope you found something that maybe opened your eyes to a new idea. It helped you to maybe understand the importance of this and how we need to tell our story, whether that is for us as educators, us as people, or to empower our students to do so. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you for coming to the summit. I hope the first 2 sessions have been good for you. And we have another half of this morning and tomorrow morning with a lot of really great stuff. Thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for what you're doing for kids. I know it's been a tough year, and all of you are giving your own time to come for more learning. That's incredible. You are incredible, and thank you.